Yeah, I
It
think
sounds like it's more of a
there is,
place. It
it's,
sounds like
Yeah.
it's a more of a place, the home that you're currently at and
Mm-hmm.
reside in.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, but the other place is more spiritual. It has more of an ancestral tie and a more communal tie because you realize you were in this, like you said, it was an act of resistance at times or resilience at times. You were in this with so many
yeah.
people who were going through
Mm,
exactly what your family was going through.
Mm-hmm.
and which
And that's
still
strong.
calls you. It's warm. It's really strong. I can,
Mm-hmm.
the way I think if Mbare, I can equate it to the ghetto. I think if you know the ghetto
Ah,
life,
yes.
Hmm.
yes, people are just one. They just love each other. It doesn't matter how, whether you are poor or rich. You are just family.
Right.
So
Mm-hmm.
yes. So and even up to now, as I say, we still love each other, and yeah,
Of
and it
course.
gave me
Yeah.
what I am, what I'm doing
Mm-hmm.
now. It came from there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I have these two homes in Mbare and in Gwatemba, and this place as well. You have put it very well, like it's a place.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to the 5th season of In the Telling, a global Black family podcast. I'm Miranda Mims, and I'm joined by my wonderful co-host, Stephen G. Fullwood, and we are the founders of the Nomadic Archivist Project. And NAP, as we call ourselves for short, is a community-driven effort to protect and celebrate Black material culture. We focus on flexibility and local knowledge over standards and ideals of perfectionism. We are about decentralizing archives, moving beyond institutional walls, so the
Mm-hmm.
people who create history can help shape how it is prepared and shared.
Hi, everyone. Miranda and I recently did a live stream where we talked about decluttering space. It's available now on our YouTube channel at Nomadic Archivist. Be in community with us for the NAP Kickback every other Tuesday. This is also where you can find our last seasons of In the Telling. And for more information about NAP, sign up for our newsletter. Go to our website at nomadicarchivistproject.com. We're looking forward to seeing you.
So in this season 5 of In the Telling, spans the global Black world with intimate conversations around family, blood, and chosen. Our guests will share the stories, objects, and rituals that hold their lives together, from migration and matriarchs to recipes, photos, and hard-won truths. No single storyline this season or theme, just a wide open table where memory meets meaning and where telling becomes a way to keep each other.
And our very special guest today is Joyce Jenje Makwenda, an award-winning producer, journalist, artist, and ethnomusicologist. She is an independent scholar, archivist, historian, and she has 40 years' experience of exploring Zimbabwe's early urban culture, music, politics, education, religion, media, fashion, sexuality, and women's histories. She is the author of several books, including Zimbabwe Township Music, Gupuro Divorce Token, Usenzi, Women Musicians of Zimbabwe 1930s to 2013, Women Parliamentarians and Politicians in Zimbabwe, and Demystifying Taboos, and Sex, the Mother of All Humanity. Welcome to the show, Joyce. Nice to have you.
Welcome, Joyce.
Thank you for inviting me to your podcast. Yes, I feel it's such an honor. Thank you so much.
We're really excited to be in conversation with you today. So how we like to start our conversation is just getting, getting us all into some grounding around who you are and your family story. So if you could just, open up with telling a little bit about who you are and where in the world are you coming from today?
Okay. Thank you so much. I'm thrilled as well to be here. I think you have introduced me very well, and you've said some of the things that I do already. My name
Mhm.
is Joyce Jenje Makwenda. I was born in Mbare township in Harare. Then it was Salisbury and the township was called Harare. But after
Mhm.
independence, it was called, the Salisbury was called Harare and then the township was called Mbare. So I
Mhm.
grew up in Mbare, and I'm the third generation of the early urban settlers. My
Mhm.
grandparents came to Mbare in 1931. Mbare
Mhm.
Township was for Black people who were coming to work. Actually, the people who were supposed to work in the I- those in the 30s and the 50s going for, yeah, were men, not women. Men, the city was made for men, especially those who would provide labor and all that. But
Okay.
my grandparents stayed together, and
Mhm.
I grew up in that setup where I belonged to the third generation of
Okay.
early urban settlers. Yes, and I'm. What else can I say about myself? Because you have said it, most of it. And I'm a mother of four
Mhm.
biological children and four biological grandchildren, but I've adopted quite a lot of children along the way through
Mhm.
my work as a journalist, as an archivist, an archivist, as a researcher, as
Mhm.
a musicologist, ethnomusicologist, because I've taught for 15 years at the College of Music, and some who come for advice from me, and as a filmmaker, because I've done quite a number of videos, so I've adopted quite a number of children along
Yeah,
the
you've expanded your family quite a bit.
way.
Mhm.
I've extended my family.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, that says a lot about you, Joyce. It sounds like you attract
Yeah.
people as well, and that you're the kind of person that people want to be around and to be mothered by. So that's pretty amazing.
Thank you.
So, what story? So, this is a family podcast, and you've done a really good job of talking already about who you are and your wider extended family. What particular story about your family do you want to share with us?
When you talk about the Black family, the
Mhm.
way I can explain the Black family, especially the one that was in the township in Mbare, I have to go back to pre-colonial era. I
Okay.
have to go and talk about the structures of the Black family in pre-colonial era, where my grandparents came from when they came to an unknown place, which was Mbare.
Mhm.
The way the Black family was structured during the pre-colonial era is that it was inclusive. It
Mhm.
Everyone was given their space, from women, children, and the men anyway. So
Mhm.
the way the women were included in that family was that they were so powerful.
Okay.
I can talk about it through the kitchen.
Mhm.
I've written an article on that. The women managed the kitchen, but it's
Okay.
not the kitchen that we see today.
Oh, okay.
Actually, yes, the kitchen was built on its own at a homestead, but then the first home to be built was the house that I can call the house of the ancestor. The house of
Okay.
the ancestors was the house where your mother, you were the grandparents would stay. So that was the first house to be built because that house was very sacred. It was built and it was, what is it? It was a house, a sanctuary also for children. Let's say you want to discipline your child and
Mhm.
it runs or he runs into that room, you were not supposed to go there. So it was and it protected the whole homestead because it was built facing the north. I don't know why they thought the north that's where
Mhm.
to
Yeah.
protect it from. And then the kitchen was the second house That's how powerful the kitchen was. The kitchen
Okay.
was the second house, and it was mostly built facing the west. And the kitchen was so powerful in that the women would cook in that kitchen, would tell stories in that kitchen, which I can equate to books and films. It was a place where archiving was done. The preservation of the family was preserved in the kitchen. I can give you an example where
Yes.
when someone died, let's say I die, when and I have to be, my body goes to the kitchen because you were born in that kitchen as well. And then when they would talk about you, they would talk about Joyce was like this, Joyce was like that. And in a way, they are telling a history about you, and
Mm-hmm.
people start knowing about you. And that, for me, that was archives. That was
Right.
Okay.
archiving. Yeah.
That's
So women
beautiful.
were so, thank you so much. Women were so powerful in that kitchen. It was an
Mm.
institution. It was a ministry on its own. And then after the kitchen had been built, they would build what they called dari. What can I call the dari? Where men sat and deliberate on
Mm-hmm.
family issues. And men had their own, they were protectors of the family. They'd go and hunt. So everyone was included. And even the
Mm-hmm.
way the houses were built in pre-colonial era, it was inclusive. That roundness, the roundness
Okay.
of that house was very inclusive. It was like hugging everyone, and you can only do it in a sort of a round way. The women, children, and the male.
Hmm.
People have come to me sometimes, and when they are talking to me, they say, "Oh, we are so happy that we have women who didn't belong to the kitchen." I belong to the kitchen because
Right. It's a
I'm
different
a
kind of
storyteller.
kitchen. Yeah.
Yes,
You
different
know.
kind of a kitchen. I'm a storyteller.
Mm-hmm.
The women during pre-colonial era, I always say, they used to tell a story where today a crew, we need a crew to tell that story. They would tell a
Mm-hmm.
story where they would sing, they would dance, and even dance with all the children. The kitchen was also a place where language was taught. I can give you also an example of maybe you know the songs of Miriam Makeba. It's a
Yes.
if I mean,
Yes.
I myself, I come from the Shona and Ndebele. So when my grandparents from the Ndebele side were teaching me Ndebele language, they would say it's a and then Miriam Makeba made it a song. So it was women who taught language. And as I
Mm.
said, everyone had their duties, and men would protect the family and going that. But then what happened when during colonial era, which affected my grandparents, their land was taken, and my grandmother on my paternal side was the first to resist, was the
Mm-hmm.
last man to resist. But then she just had to leave. So they carried my father and they walked from where they were supposed to have been their home, and they walked to the city,
Mm.
you
Mm-hmm.
know, and they didn't even know where they were going, but they
Mm.
walked to the city and went to Salisbury. And that's where their urban life started. And when men went to the urban, they were not supposed to stay with their wives. Their wives were supposed to stay in the rural. But my father stayed with my grandmother. They
Okay.
were that was resisting the authority.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So my grandmother ended up working so hard to try and supplement my grandfather's income.
Income.
And
Mm-hmm.
they started what I mean. She was so instrumental in the informal sector. That's how the black family was like in the early urban setting. Although later on, when things started getting better because of how they were also fighting. Um, I Let me see. And then my mother, when he married my father, she married my father. They, she was one of the early journalists in the 50s. and they
Mm-hmm.
had me, and I grew up in Mbare seeing all this, that was the black family in Mbare there in the
Okay.
colonial what can I say, pre-independent era,
Right,
Um,
right.
Okay.
yes.
Joyce,
So
can I ask you a question? So when you said you're third generation, did you have the opportunity to live or to experience living, on the land where the kitchen was and the house of ancestors and the diary? Was all of that, were you born into that and then moved to um the township, or was it something that
Mm.
you weren't able to experience?
I experienced both worlds, the urban
Okay.
and
You did.
rural.
Okay. You did.
My maternal grandparents had a farm in Bulawayo.
Mm-hmm.
That farm, they were black people were given farms but they were smaller than the
Mm.
white
Mm-hmm.
people's farms. They were bigger than the what was then the reserves, and that's where I really understood about the kitchen
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
because um, it, um, women would give birth in the kitchen. And coming from the urban setup, I would like say, oh my goodness me, how can people here give birth in the kitchen? This is so unhygienic. And my
Mm.
Mm-hmm.
grandmother would say, life begins in the kitchen and it ends in the kitchen.
Mm-hmm.
So as I'm
Wow.
saying, that's how powerful it was because when you die, you have to go into your parents' kitchen. So
Mm-hmm.
I understood that very well, and I
Okay.
saw the rural area, but then the rural area that also was a much advanced one because it was a farm.
Mm-hmm.
I saw the houses, how they were built, the
Mm-hmm.
grandparents' houses, other those I mean, like my uncle's houses and all that. So I was very fortunate to live in those both worlds. And when my grandfather passed away here in Mbare, my grandmother went to home to build also a home in the rural, but then she kept the urban house. Although
Mm-hmm.
we had moved, I was born at my grandparents' house, but we moved
Okay.
to our own house with my father and mother and my siblings. So that's what I can maybe explain, that I was fortunate to experience the both worlds, both yes,
This
both worlds.
this is really awesome, Joyce, because you spoke a lot about both your maternal and paternal grandparents. And so in our pre-conversation with you, you spoke about being raised by six parents. And I really love that because I was super excited to continue reading what you wrote to us. And so can you talk about name them, of course, we need to know their names, and then how they kind of shaped who you've become today as a researcher, as a writer, as a filmmaker, as an archivist.
As a collector of stories.
Mm-hmm.
And their stories, yes. My
Mhm.
grandmother, my maternal parents were in Bulawayo, but it's a farm, as I said, in Gwatemba.
Mm-hmm.
It's called Gwatemba. It's still there, the farm, and in a place called Filabus, but out of Bulawayo. Their names were Ukulu. When I say Ukulu, I mean grandpa was
Mm-hmm.
called Mateza Dube, and ugogo, grandmother, was called Malandu Mangena Mateza Dube.
Okay.
And my grandparents, my paternal grandparents, Ambuya, Ambuya in Shona, its grandmother was called Chuuteknes Jenje Mbere, and my grandfather was called Jenje Makwenda. My mother and father, the ones whom I always say they were on the hot seat, raising an artist is not easy. And anyway, so my mother was called Kenan Mateza Dube Jenve, and my father was called David Jenje. We used to address them with their totems. My maternal grandmother was called Mangena. That was a totem, and my grandfather was Juve or Mateza, and my grandfather on my father's side was Mrewa. That was a totem, and my grandmother was Shumba Yemazi, and my mother Umaduve. Umaduve means, if you put M, it's Ma, and the Dube is the totem, and my father was Mrewa. We always called him Mrewa. So I was so lucky. I really want to thank the universe for enabling me to see my 6 parents, because they all shaped my worldview, the way I see the world today. And what I learned before I share my stories with you is that in life, when we 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 have children or we have young people around us, let us tell them stories. Let us tell them what it was then and where they are going, because sometimes we are afraid of telling them stories because they look at us and say, oh, these are old-fashioned ideas or people. But what happens is that when you tell them stories, they will make their own choices, but they know what it was like and where they are going. This is what happened with me, with my parents. My grandparents, my 2 grandfathers, it's like they were from the same mother. They talked about politics to this little person. And, I didn't understand that time, but I was so respectful, and because I loved stories. So I
Okay.
stayed and listened. My grandfather, my paternal grandfather, told me his stories because I was his first grandchild, and he
Okay.
wanted me to know about our tribe, our family, and how the Washawasha people were conquerors who conquered and lived in a valley where they were even protected by their soldiers around the mountains. And this is the place where he was removed. And my maternal grandfather also talked about politics, about Msiligazi, about how they came from South Africa, the Zulu kingdom, the Ndebele nation, and they were so proud of their families, their tribes, the 2 of them, of my grandfathers. And as I said, it's like they were from the same family, and yet they were worlds apart. Harare and Bulawayo, if you check on the map, it's quite, you mountains, you pass mountains, rivers to get there. But then they were all very much political. I think it also
Okay.
had to do with what had happened to them. And then this is how I saw the world. And then my grandmother used to talk about how certain girls went to hunt. We went to look for wood, and they met someone whom they had never met. They didn't even know about this guy. And then they fell for one of them fell for this guy, and this guy turned into a lion and ate this girl. And the one the ones who had remained went home
Okay.
to tell the story. But then it was because she saw that I was becoming a young woman, and it was a way of warning me. Later on, I learned that those stories were, and she would tell them as if they are real.
Right.
Yeah, but
Yep.
the one who did it was, yeah, and she would tell them with her friend, and the friend would say, yes, Mama Ngena, I don't children. What happened of them? And they'll talk with them. You know,
Nice.
so and then the person who didn't tell stories was my paternal grandmother. She was very hurt, I think, because, as I said, she was the last to resist the land issues thing. Like they had to drag her to take her out of the
Yeah.
house. So she was very hurt, I think, and all she wanted when she got to the cities to work for her children. and her grandchildren. She worked, that woman. Or she just worked. She worked so hard. She worked. She collected laundry from white people in the neighboring house. And yes, yes. And she bought her bicycle. She would collect the laundry using the bicycle, and then bought a car, an Austin Cambridge, which we even used when going to crash. She was also a fashion designer, and she made no education, but she was, and she made us very good dresses and all that. And you know, she didn't with she wanted, what can I say? She showed women in the township, but that if you have financial independence, you live a happy life.
Okay.
You know what she would do? I always tell people this story. When she used to buy very expensive and good dresses, and when going to church, she would make sure that people have settled in the church, and then she would go in, you know, so that everyone would see and good, beautiful dresses and shoes, whatever clothes, and she would go into the church, you know, with a stiletto. I'm talking about this.
Yeah.
And you know, she would make, they would make the stiletto is like that and she would go into the church. Everyone would like look at her. And my grandfather was in the church choir, and you would start coughing like, oh my, like. But
Wow.
I used to think it's show off, but then I said, "Whoa, she was just showing people that I work for my life, you know."
Right.
And
And still
they
having
would laugh
fun.
about.
Right.
Yeah, she was having fun. And
Yeah.
my mother and father, you know, told me interesting stories. My father, he had a way of telling stories that, you know, I even wrote a paper on education, and I said, this is another way of educating children, not to force them with information, but just tell them in a light way. Because what my father told me about township music that he grew up listening is what I started with, you know, because I'm a very musical person. And when I was growing up, my parents thought I would be a performer, I would be a musician or an actor, because that's what that's what I really wanted to be. And you know, I used to go to the bioscope, which is called film today, and my father used to sit by the gate listening to jazz. I got to know about Louis Armstrong, John Coltrane, Jimmy Smith, you know. But, you know, he sat by the gate drinking his, but he was, you know, I always say my father was a sophisticated, you know, because each music genre creates a culture, and jazz in the township created sophisticated, you know, the sophisticated people. So while he was drinking his beer, I would say, Baba, Father, can I have money to go to bioscope? And he would look at me and say, have you finished dressing? I would say, yes, I have. And you know, because I would be wearing, oh my goodness me, when I think of it now, I say, oh, that culture. I would be wearing a top just covering breasts, stomach out, and a skirt was sort of a belt. Because, and then the high heels, the you know, the platform shoes, and the big up. My hair was a big afro.
Right.
And my father would ask me, have you finished dressing? And I would say, yes, I finished dressing. And he would laugh.
And he was like,
My father had this
no.
laugh. He had this laugh that, oh my goodness me. And then he would start talking about how he grew up, how he would go to Mims, which was a hall that time, where they would go and listen to music and even watch films when they were growing up. Actually, my father used to sell tickets so that you would get entrance. You know, the bands would say, "Okay, come in." You know, when he was young. So he would tell me all those stories, and he said we used to sit and listen to good music. You know, in
Mhm.
a way, he said yours is not very good, especially rock music. He didn't want to say much about it, but it really disturbed him. The
Mm.
volume, you know, you would say, "Are your ears not hurt about this music?" And I said, "No, they are fine." You know, but when I sang pop and soul, like Motown music, oh, you would say, you know, when you grow up, be a musician. He encouraged me to be a musician. But
Mhm.
it was rock that he was really like, oh my goodness me. And
Did you end
my
up
mother,
playing? Did you end up playing an instrument?
Mm.
I play a little bit. You know, sometimes when there's a band, I go and I jam. I just join it. But now,
Mm.
since I've finished, I've done a lot of research. I've created an archive and I've written so many books. I'm winding up to really like perform, you know, because
Okay.
Okay.
I've composed quite a lot of songs.
Good.
Oh,
But then
okay.
the universe saw in me a researcher, and I was told
Mm.
to do that. Yes,
Right.
so I accepted the call and I did what I had to
Okay.
do. Anyway, so
Mhm.
my father told me all these stories. Then when I was expecting my fourth child, I went to him. I said, Baba, those
Mhm.
stories you were telling me about the music in Mbare, your music you grew up with, because that music was the beginning of our popular music. And he
Okay.
laughed like,
Right.
oh, you were accusing me, because we used to tease him whenever we go to watch Bioscope and we'd say, Baba, give us money. Oh, no, we'll say, Baba, please tell us those stories, because we wanted money. And he would say, oh, you want money. And sometimes he would to tell us again the stories. And he didn't think I was very serious. And he realized
Mhm.
then later that I was serious. And then he gave me the name of one musician. It was from that musician to the other, from that musician to the other. And
Mhm.
until I created a database, which was, yeah, with a lot of musicians, and I sometimes I couldn't get some of the musicians, and I also couldn't get some of the songs that they sang, and I
Okay.
couldn't get their photos. And my mother, who was a journalist in the 50s, said to me, you can actually get these things at the National Archives. And I said, what? Because my
Oh,
research
okay.
started in the 80s. And I said, are you saying I can get what was done in the 50s and is still there? And I went to the archives.
Mhm.
Oh, it became my second home. And even my son, who was born in 1985, when I was when I started doing the research in
Mhm.
1984, expecting him, he didn't really. He was not very friendly with this research of mine because it took me away from him. And whenever you
Okay.
phoned and said, "Can I speak to Joyce?" I said, "Yes, she's at the archives." You know, even if I have not at the archives. So my mother directed me to talk to go to the archives.
Chaive chinu chinodi wakumusha kwedu. Chaive chinu chinodi wakumusha kwedu. Chato kumusha. Chaive chinu chikuru. Chato kumusha. Chaive chinu chikuru. Chaive chinu chinodi wakumusha kwedu. Chaive chinu chinodi wakumusha kwedu. Chato kumusha. Chaive chinu chikuru.
I just wanted to to go back just a little bit into, what your life was like before the township, or what your family structure was like before the township, and then what your life was like afterwards, and the impact that the storytellers in your life from your family members had on you to becoming this person who also researches and tells stories and passes on these histories, right? How much of this, the work that you do you do with your family? Like you mentioned your son in the 80s, but how much of this do you do with your family, if at all, in terms of building an archive? Or how much would you say that your growing up in the family structure that you did impacted you to do this work?
When my parents were still alive, I would work with them, they were like my consultants. I would, like when I did the documentary, I would consult them,
Okay.
and yes, and they are the ones who would also point to people that I would interview, as I've said. So I worked with them. Even my grandmother, my paternal grandmother, when she was the only parent left, I interviewed her for the broadcast, and I produced and directed that documentary. And my grandparents, my maternal, I never really set to interview them, but they told me a lot of stories, as I've said. So especially on this book, there's history of women politicians. All my 6 parents are featured in a way.
Okay.
Music, the politics, everything. And I have written some of them in the books. I've worked with my children.
Okay.
Yes, the first 2 became filmmakers, although the other one took another path. They trained in Denmark, and I would work with them and edit. My son Simba is an editor. Sometimes I work with him. But with children also want to like follow their other paths. So that's how I've worked with them. And the other one in the UK, she became a musician. I will sing the language, sang a song on
Please
video,
do.
although yes, the voice was for someone, but then she did the video, and she ended up even going around singing, and yeah. So my children have taken after me. The last born, the one who grew up with the document, with research, is into arts as a as a culinary person, culinary. They say culinary. So I work with my family and my siblings. I used to work with them, but as I say, people also take their part. The thing with when you are called by the university to do something like what I'm doing, because it was a very strong calling. Sometimes there have been times where you don't get funding.
Right.
And you still do that. You still work, but then that's when it becomes a difficult thing to continue. But I have continued because I've been called to do this.
It's really a blessing to be able to work with your family, in these various ways. And some of them have taken up the mantle of being musicians, singers, editors, filmmakers. It's really awesome. And speaking about family, I want to talk very briefly about home. What is home? When you think of the word home, what does home mean to you now?
I was laughing this other day. I left Mbare in 1980, I think 81. And 82, I bought this house where I am in Mbare. The place was once a whites-only place, Although, yes. And I've been here for 42 years, but you won't believe it that I never took it as home until I'd been here for 30 years. For me,
okay.
home was Mbare. That
Mm.
you people will say, I'll say, I'll be going home, And people will say, what about where? I said, I never really thought I would call it home one day. I think
Okay.
what's really made me call it home now especially that the archive is here. Everything that I've done is here, but I never really, and now I can call it home, but for me, Mbare is home. I'm always
Right.
in that place. I always go to Mbare. You know, Mbare raised me, gave me what I have, gave,
I love that.
you know, yeah,
Yep.
it showed me to be, what can I say, despite the problems that we had as Black people in Mbare, we survived, and that resistance, that spirit of togetherness again that was in Mbare, that is still there. Actually, I'm the
Yeah.
chairperson of senior citizens in Mbare. Now, senior citizens are people who grow up in Mbare, and that love that we still have for each other, which is not made, which is just love. You know, you feel you are home. Yes, here in Maborena, home is my home, but there is a difference a bit. My children maybe also feel this is home for them. But for me, yes, it's a home, but you know, Mbare is home.
That's beautiful.
That's what that, and also my because even my grandparents' house is still there. Last, I think 2 weeks ago, we had a memorial for my grandmother, and you know, being at that house where I was born, although we ended up having our home as my for my parents ended up having their home for us. It's still home, you know, the way I was born. So I really love Mbare, and I love Gwatemba, the farm that was left by my maternal grandparents, because they said it also belongs to all of you. So sometimes when I'm here, when I'm there, I feel them. You know, it's
Okay.
home for me, yes. But the home that I have, I bought, it's also home now. So
Yes.
I
It
think
sounds like it's more of a
there
place. It sounds like
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a more of a place, the home that you're currently at and reside in. But the other place is more spiritual. It has more of an ancestral tie and a more communal tie, because you realize you were in this, like you said, it was an act of resistance at times or resilience at times. You were in this with so many
yeah.
people who were going through
Mm,
exactly what your family was going through.
and which
And that's
still
strong.
calls you. It's warm. It's really strong. I can, the way I think Mbare, I can equate it to the ghetto. You know, I think if you know the ghetto
Ah,
life,
yes.
yes, people are just one. They just love each other. It doesn't matter how, you know, whether you are poor or rich. You know, you are just family. You know,
Right.
so it's yes. So and even up to now, as I say, you know, we still love each other, and
Of
and it
course.
gave me
Yeah.
what I am, what I'm doing now. It came from there, you know. So I have these 2 homes in Mbare and in Gwatemba, and this place as well. You have put it very well, like it's a place.
Uh, well, Joyce, it has been amazing talking with you today.
Thank you.
So
Yeah.
happy that we got this to work out. I'd love to give you the space to close us out. If there's anything that you want to share with us, any last thoughts or comments, you want people to know about who you are, your family, or your work, please, we'd love to hear from you.
Okay, just to round up, I think, as I always say, and I will continue to say this, let's tell our stories. No matter
Yes.
how maybe our children can look at us like, oh my goodness me, what is she saying now? Let's tell our stories, because if we don't tell our stories,
Right.
and if we don't document our stories,
Right.
people who have some people will tell those stories in their own way. We need to
Absolutely.
in our way. We need to be proud of what we have achieved
Right.
in families, as an individual, as a family. I always say, from an individual story, a family story will come. Document your history as an individual, and that story will be a family story, and the family story will be a community story, and the community story will be a national story and international. Like now we are talking about Mbare, because I documented it, and now it's now international. You know,
Right.
many people now know about it, and I am happy that let's do that. And I also want to say, there's something that I always tell people about my family. I should have said it. You know, in our family, you said, how was it like in, let's say, musically? We had three Jimmys in my family, but they lived together very happy. We had Jimmy Smith, we had Jimi Hendrix, we had Jim Reeves, you know.
I love it. I love
Yes,
it.
and my father would play Jimmy Smith early in the morning, 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock. He puts news, and at 1 when we came from school, my mother would play Jimi Hendrix, and me and my brother later on at 5 p.m. or at what time, wherever we got the chance, would play Jimmy Reeves. We would play Jimi Hendrix. So that was an amazing vibe in our family. And lastly, I want to say, I want to thank my country for giving me this. The Zimbabwe has got a very amazing, friendly people, hardworking and very resilient people.
Yes.
I think yes. So I thank you so much. And lastly, I'm becoming like an old woman. You know, our grandmothers would tell you, would stop the bus and say, no, I've forgotten this. Let me tell you this. So I think just round up again, the documentation.
Yes,
Meditation.
right.
Important.
Definitely done that. You've definitely done that.
Yes. Thank you so much. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much,
having me.
Joyce.
It has been such an honor. Thank you so
Thank you
much.
for sharing your
Thank
stories
you.
and documentation.
Doc-